Good morning. Today is Thursday, January 8th, 2026, and welcome to today's meeting of the Fair Political Practices Commission's Law and Policy Committee. Ms. Vo, will you please take roll?
Commissioner Brandt?
Here.
Chair Silver?
Here. Let's move on to item number 1. That's going to be public comment for items not on today's agenda. Do we have any public comment for items not on today's agenda? Okay, hearing and seeing none, let's move on to item number 2. And that's going to be approval of our February 2025 minutes. Commissioner Brandt, do you have any?
I don't. I wasn't here, so I would request to abstain if that works. Or do you need the vote and I'll just say yes?
Do you need a second in order to? General Counsel Bainbridge?
The minutes do not have to be approved for these meetings technically. If we wanted them approved, you would need 2 votes. But, you know, if Commissioner Brandt doesn't feel comfortable adopting them, because these meetings are not technically subject to the Open Meeting Act, he wouldn't have to. So
Yeah, I
there you go. There's your vague
understand Commissioner Brandt's concern. So in my discretion, I'm just going to move on to item number 3. But before we do, any public comment on those minutes? None. Okay, excellent. Let's move on to item number 3, and that's going to be our legislative update. We have Senior FPPC Legislative Counsel, Lindsay Nakano, with us today. Good morning, Ms. Nakano.
Good morning, Chair Silver, Commissioner Brandt, Lindsay Nakano, Senior Legislative Counsel for the FPPC. Today I will be presenting 10 legislative proposals, 8 of which I provided general descriptions of at the last meeting in November. And the 9th was proposed to be added by Commissioner Ortiz at that meeting, and the 10th proposal is also new. I will go over all of them today in the detail that we have currently developed. I'll pause after each one for any questions or discussion from the committee. And after the presentation and all discussion, the committee may choose to take a vote to make any recommendations to the full commission at next week's meeting.
And then you're also going to relay along our recommendations, suggestions where appropriate in the legislative report for this upcoming meeting. Is that correct?
If you'd like me to memorialize it in the report, I can do so. Otherwise, I would report it just verbally to the commission.
Okay. Well, I think we should stick with whatever's been our protocol in the past.
In that case, I believe a verbal update.
Okay, perfect. Any concerns with that approach? Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Nakano.
Okay, I'll move to the first proposal. This would require candidates and treasurers to complete training developed by the commission relating to campaign requirements. This is not yet reflected in the draft language, but completing the training would be a condition of appearing on the ballot. Staff are still considering the scope of the bill, whether it would apply to state and local or just one or the other, and we do have interested authors on this proposal. I'll ask for any questions.
Excellent. The only thing I have to say about this is a priority for me as chair. Candidates, treasurers, they're one of the few folks in the political process who do not have to take a training. And the campaign finance rules, while they're certainly reasonable, sensible in my estimation, they are complicated in some aspects. So I think it's really important that we give candidates and treasurers the opportunity and ask them to take this training before they engage in this process.
My question is on the conditional, just thinking about the timing wise and whether I don't think we need to have requirements on us, but they need to do it far enough ahead. So what about those who decide to sign up on the last day and those kinds of things? So I want to make sure that we're not, making it impossible for candidates to do that. So there needs to be something that where they may file their papers on the very last day, and we need to make sure that there's a way and there's time to be able to do it. I mean, whether it's the next week or whatever that may be, or online or any of those things. I think there's a way. In fact, is there a way for us to do online? So at National Judicial College where I work, we have this ability to be able to, you do a webinar, it tracks you actually watched it and all those kinds of things. You have to take test or something, or, you know, and you don't necessarily, but there are ways to do that where they can do it in the middle of the night and they are there, it gets recorded and they get certificates. So is there a way to do that as well? Do we?
I think
mean-
what we're contemplating is using, what we currently have is the Blackboard system that we use for our prep program. So they would be online courses that people can take at any time. Once they're registered with our system, then they're free to go online whenever.
Okay.
And so it happens pretty quickly. They get an automatic email with their login. So it would be pretty quick for those who register or get on the ballot at the last
Okay.
minute.
So I don't know whether we need something in the language, but if that comes up, I'm open to that kind of thing. In other words, I don't think we need to open with that, but it is something to make sure. I want to make sure, my goal here is to make sure that candidates can change their mind and decide at the last minute. They have deadlines, but I want to make sure our deadline or their ability to take the class does not interfere with them showing up on the ballot.
Yeah, yes, that makes sense, and I think our intent is not to affect those deadlines or change the ability of candidates to qualify last minute. So
Right.
we will consider that moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with your concerns, and I think that's got to be a priority for us moving forward.
But I don't think it necessarily needs to be in the language, in the statutory language. In fact, I'd rather it not be, because I think we are committed to doing that. And so I think that may be enough. But if that issue comes up, willing to deal with it.
And I think we should also note that we're going to engage with SOS on this because it kind of involves them to a certain extent, to make sure that it's a fluid process for candidates and treasurers.
Right. But I don't think that needs to be in statute.
Okay. Seeing no further comments and questions, I'll move on to the second proposal. This one is the first in print. SB 401 by Senator Hurtado was introduced last year. It was amended to delete its former contents and replace it with this new proposal. The language appears in the report. The bill would authorize the commission to extend PRA filing deadlines for individuals who live in an area affected by an emergency proclaimed by the governor or a local jurisdiction. And staff would like to add that the commission may extend the filing deadline only if the emergency is reasonably likely to affect the ability of the affected parties to timely file.
Can you remind me where 401 is now?
It is in the first house, so it will be heard next
January
week.
31st. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I appreciate that we're, attempting to put that caveat in there. The key consideration for me is I just don't want to put the FPPC in a position where it has to decide what an emergency is. That's my main concern here.
Mhm.
Hold on. Don't we want the discretion to be able to decide that? I mean, in other words, they said only technical governor declared emergencies. I mean, I think we may need to have that discussion. In other words, there may be times when an emergency happens and something, the city hall blows up or whatever. And so there's not access to, and they have no systems to be able to do whatever they need to do. Their internet is down, whatever that may be. I think I don't know. I think we may need discretion. I mean, there may be circumstances where we do need to make that judgment.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I don't want to put us in a position where we have to determine whether an internet outage is an emergency situation. And then you have folks who are, upset that perhaps we found an emergency in one circumstance that they consider similar to what they're dealing with. I'd prefer to leave it to the experts at the local level as well as in the governor's office to make those calls. And it sounds like by including the locals in this, we're not going to have as great of a consideration in terms of response time. It sounds like the locals are particularly responsive when it comes to states of emergencies for local issues. But I would let Lindsay
Okay.
or General Counsel expand on that. With that said, I completely, see where you're coming from.
So maybe then it is the allowing, it's not just the governor. In other words, they may be able, that body may need to declare an emergency or whatever that may be, requiring that. So allowing the breadth of who, and you're right, okay, I hear you on us not making those choices. So, yeah, okay, I'm good with that. So I'm good with, yeah, thinking about that. A balance there, figuring out how to make sure that we don't get stuck with, it's only if the governor, and then the governor holds that entity hostage. And well, that's not important enough for me. So,
And potentially want to reach out to, we obviously want to reach out to League of Cities stakeholders here who are going to be able to give us an idea of our potential blind spots. So if they have concerns about this approach or have suggestions for other approaches, I'm very interested to hear what they have to say.
agreed.
I'll just add, Galena West Executive Director. This is a permissive standard, so the emergency declaration has been extended to the locals also declaring emergencies, but the FPPC has discretion to then, as the part that Ms. Nakano added about if the emergency affects the ability to file. So there is some discretion with the FPPC. And then I would just remind everybody that then enforcement has prosecutorial discretion. So then if there is something that falls outside of this, and we've had these kind of instances in the past, where then say it's a new law that passed, or there's something other unforeseen that has happened, that they have that discretion to not move forward with those referrals.
Okay,
That's helpful.
yeah, with that, I'm good.
Moving on to the third proposal, this would extend the time period in which filing officers are authorized to waive the late filing fee for statements of economic interests. Under the current time constraint, many of these statements that come to them late, where they think it would be appropriate to waive the fine or the fee, it is beyond the period where they have the authority to do so or the discretion to do so. This proposal is still in development. We're trying to find the right time period and trigger for when their discretion ends. So I will keep the committee and commission updated on where we land on that one.
So do we have any examples that could justify, this extension specifically? One that I recall is perhaps you have a filer who's not notified of their requirement to file a Form 700 until a year later or until they're leaving office. Then they go ahead and file, and there's no indication that there's any aggravating circumstances.
Right. There are several circumstances and situations that the SEI unit, our Form 700 unit, has brought up. Some of them are that they never received the notification. There was a technical error. Their email wasn't set up yet, but somebody had sent them the notice before that, so they never received it. There's filing officer error where they failed to send the notice. In some cases, filers will have an expanded statement where all they need to do is check a box in the system, but if they fail to check that box, then they technically didn't file part of their statement. So there are technical errors that can occur. So those are just a few of some of the situations they see.
So I have personal experience with this. So when my very first time filing Form 700, 30 some odd years ago, I filed with the City of Los Angeles. I was appointed by the City of Los Angeles to the Metropolitan Water District Board of Directors. And I thought filing with the City of Los Angeles, that was enough. And I had no idea that I had to file. The council responsible for this waited until, so I missed the deadline, and then, but they didn't send me, well, there was an email in those days. They came up to me at the board meeting and said, you haven't filed. It's like, I filed it with the city, and so, but it was, I had a week at that point before the I had missed the deadline. So I had like a week left before I could, and do it. So get it in right away. And so I did that. So I know that kind of thing, because especially the first time you're serving in an office, you don't know all the requirements. But I guess that's prosecutorial. So yeah, so I sorry, I'm just sharing that because I understand this one. I don't know. So it's fine.
That's a really good point. The prosecutorial discretion piece is
right.
Good to kind of explore here because yes, we do have prosecutorial discretion, but that takes up a lot of our resources. right? That's really what this bill is about. I'm sure there's some staffers or stakeholders that are wondering why the FPPC would sponsor a bill that extends waivers of penalties. The reason for it is so that we can focus on the most serious violations of the act, right? Not having enforcement staff instead or administrative staff working on, honest mistakes, very low public harm situations.
And I'll clarify that this applies only to the late filing fee, which is technically an administrative fee that's assessed by the filing officer. So this doesn't go to administrative penalties or the enforcement process. This is a separate
Right.
sort of fine. It's a $10 a day per after the deadline,
Right.
up to $100. So it's a separate fine system.
Huh. Yeah, and I'm thinking about, because they didn't report it or do anything, and they gave me the grace to, to deal with this. So yeah. Okay, I'm good with this. I'm good with this, and I think this is a great idea. Because there may be a number of things, but especially with filing officers. I mean, in that case, I was just dealing with a Met filing officer, and and they exercise discretion, but they kind of anyway. And it was my first time. So anyway, sorry, I'm defending myself. I'm way past the statute of limitations. Anyway,
Yeah.
okay, sorry, just thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is a subject that comes up with the SCI unit also, is first-time filers who are just unaware of what their duties are. Okay, moving on to the fourth proposal. This would revise and add requirements relating to nonprofit donor disclosure in connection with sponsored travel, and these are based on the recommendations of the Audit Division. The proposal would eliminate the condition that reporting is required only if the nonprofit's travel payments reach 1/3 of its total spending, as reflected on the nonprofit's IRS Form 990. The proposal would retain the other existing monetary thresholds that trigger reporting. And the proposal would additionally explicitly require disclosure of each travel payment and the name of affected officials, and would add related record-keeping requirements, another suggestion and recommendation of the Audit Division. We do have an interested author on this proposal. Pause for any questions.
Yes, I think this is important. Tell me about those who are affected by this. Have they been responsive? I mean, I think I've heard that there's some support and interest of, what's the environmental one?
CFE?
Yeah, CFE. Anything new on that? I mean, you've told us a little bit about that, but anything new on that? I mean, you've got an interested author, and do they think, anyway, can you tell me more about what the interest is, or, are there concerns?
I think the interest is the same as what commission staff have put forth, which is that based on our research, very few nonprofits are actually required to report, or it's unclear if they're required to report, because that 1/3 threshold, it's difficult to determine whether they meet it based on that form. So this would make clear who is required to report. It would require a little bit more reporting from the affected nonprofits. We haven't yet heard from the nonprofits. I wanted to wait a bit until we developed the proposal before bringing it to them, but our plan is to talk to them and get their feedback.
Okay, good.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the fifth proposal. This relates to clarifying the limits on the use of campaign funds for travel, and this one is still in development. We're developing some options and different ways to approach this, so I will come back with more detail when we have that.
And I agree that we need more discussion, because, so the issues I see here are, I mean, they're actually, no, I don't think I need to talk more. You did, in your memo, you identified some of those issues, and those are the ones that I kind of see as well, which is it, what's the standard? Is it first class? Is it, are there
Right.
things, what, how do you judge, yeah. So but I think you understand that, so I think I will not say anything further. Sorry, I'm talking a lot more in this one because it's a committee, and I feel like, am I allowed to? I mean, okay, that's okay. Okay, just checking. For all those out in, watching from
On YouTube?
Yeah, like all three of you.
Yeah, discussions, questions are all welcome.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move on to the next one. This is the proposal that would expand the prohibition against creating a fictitious appearance of support or opposition for or against a legislative or administrative action, a practice referred to sometimes as astroturfing. And under existing law, this applies to lobbyists and lobbying firms, and this proposal would extend it to apply to lobbyist employers, who may be the parties more likely to pay for this activity. Commission staff have found research that suggests that the use of AI for astroturfing may be on the rise, and this proposal would help strengthen the existing prohibition to protect against this behavior. And we do have a confirmed author for this proposal.
I personally think this is a very important bill before the technological considerations. And then when you consider how emerging technology can be used to facilitate astroturfing in a more effective, cheaper way, it just even bolsters that need for this sort of expansion of this prohibition. So I'm glad this is something we're pursuing and that we have an author for it.
And I think we're going to need this because AI and the kinds of things that are happening are changing so quickly. I think we're going to, yeah, I would agree with you. And, you know, astroturfing has been an issue for decades. But I think in this community, in this world, the challenge is going to be, I think this is going to be a challenge, I think, to write. I mean, I think it's got a good start, but, you know, I think there may be a lot of issues. And this may be people who are not necessarily, in other words, I think technology folks are going to be maybe interested. There may be non-traditional people who don't usually talk to us, who may have some views. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I just think that you've got a confirmed author, work with the author, but I'd encourage the committee as well, whichever house it is, to do some of that work as well. I mean, in other words, I think it's best for the legislature to do that work. This may be an opportunity for them also to connect with the technology community.
I agree. I'm hoping we can take a really kind of thoughtful, inclusive approach to this legislation so that even the folks that are going to be subject to it feel comfortable with how we're approaching, and they can flag issues that don't really serve the intent of what we're trying to achieve here.
Right.
Noted. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the proposal relating to automatic termination. In existing regulation, the Chief of Enforcement has discretion to administratively terminate committees under specific conditions. This proposal would create an automatic termination a provision that enables committees to be terminated if they meet certain conditions, including that they failed to submit a campaign report for the last 12 months, they had a minimal cash balance at the end of their last report of $3,000 or less, or $5,000 or less, and the committee owes $2,000 or more to the controlling candidate. The committee would have an opportunity, a notice, as well as opportunity to object. And then if after 90 days they do not object, their treasurer's appointment would lapse. And then after another 90 days, the committee would be automatically terminated. Both the committee, the treasurer, and the commission would have the opportunity and authority to object. So if there's some reason the commission thinks that the committee could stay open or should stay open, then they would have the authority to stop the termination process.
No comment? Fine.
Is there any sort of hypothetical or example you can give us of the types of committees that we're targeting with this legislation? It sounds like the threshold is quite low for the amount of money that would be in these committees that are being terminated.
And if I can, I'd like to defer to Executive Director
And if we
West.
don't have any, that's fine.
No, there's actually thousands of examples because back in, I was just pulling up the numbers, in 2015, the Enforcement Division received 2,460 of these types of referrals. and over 1,700 in the next year, and like 6 months later. Because when Secretary of State goes through their records, like they're doing now to now institute the new CARS program, they find what we call the deadwood committees, the committees that haven't been active for 10 years or 20 years or 15 years and have no people associated to them in less than $3,000, or for ones that have been dormant longer, it's up to $5,000 with $2,000 of debt. So we came to those criteria in the regulation through looking at many committees to determine where is the line of how much is too much money to not use resources to pursue them. So it can be thousands of committees. Talking to Secretary of State's office, they have almost that many more plus some to refer now. So we're trying to get ahead of this to where there's more of a program that's also available in other states where it's more of an automatic termination of dormant committees that have minimal amounts of money left over.
And are we working with the Secretary of State on this legislation?
We are.
They're also like.
We are
co-sponsoring?
hoping, we are asking them if they would like to co-sponsor.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, moving on. The next proposal would transfer the duty to conduct the lobbyist training currently conducted by the legislative ethics committees to the commission. The commission would develop and provide this training also on a on-demand basis, likely on the Blackboard platform or something similar. Currently, it's not available on demand to lobbyists. I believe it's available just on certain dates and provided live. So this would hopefully be more convenient and available to them if it was transferred in this way. The commission would have the same authority as the legislative ethics committees to charge a fee for this training. And the hope is that the commission will be able to have funds that are left over from the legislative ethics committee that are unused from that pot of funds transferred to help develop this training.
Okay, yeah, this is another one, like, yeah, okay, go with this one. The only thing I'll say from my understanding, from my past experience, is I think there was a reason why it was assigned to the legislature, because part of it was to communicate to lobbyists that, look, we're serious, you need to do this, because it was partly a communication thing. You need to do this, not for that enforcement, but you need to protect us. We don't want to get in these things. We don't want to find out that you've done something and you talk to us. And so part of that was, I think that, I don't know, I mean, this was 50 years ago, but my guess is that's why it was originally with the legislature, but I think it makes sense for us to do it. But I think we may need to, and not in statute, but I think in developing this, I think we need to work with the legislature for them to be able to communicate that they're committed to this, they're committed to ethics compliance, and that there are reasons why that. So I think that's just something for us to, in the development of it. So I think fine in the language, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay, moving on to one of the new proposals. This was recommended by Commissioner Ortiz at the November meeting relating to the existing requirement or authorization for campaign funds to be used for security expenses under certain conditions. Existing law permits campaign funds to be used for providing personal security to a candidate, elected officer, or their immediate family or staff. And the suggestion was that any security personnel that are hired with campaign funds must be appropriately licensed as security personnel. So that would be added to the existing section.
It's fine.
Yeah,
Yes.
that makes sense to me. My only concern at this point, because it looks like we have 10 proposals for sponsorship, is that, are we hitting the point where we have too many
Wow, okay. Sorry.
proposals? I mean, we had what, 7 last year? And then we got 6 of the 7 signed?
Yes. And we do have a 2-year bill also relating to behested payments that is in the second house, but it is a lot. I think it's more than we've done before. So yes, it is a lot.
Okay, well, that's helpful background.
Mhm.
Maybe we can set a record this year. But that's something that I think we'll raise with the rest of the commissioners when we're making decisions on these last two pieces of legislation that we haven't voted on as being sponsors for.
Okay.
Let me just share, because this is going on in my world of judiciary, costs of security, and especially, in dealing with it, a judge gets a high-profile case that has issues with that people are, I'll say, passionate about. They suddenly escalate, and they were nobody, and suddenly they have a case, and they're doing this, and it is a challenge. It's a building challenge because of the nature of the conditions today about how are courts paying for it, and courts don't. Is the court paying for the judge's security, and then it also, you have to work with the cities, and so then the cities. So I did a program in 2024 on election law, and this was one of the issues that we dealt with, which was security, judicial security. And we had judge in our program who talked about how she had court security, she had city security around because the court was in the city, but she lived in the suburbs. So it was ultimately her small town suburban police officers that had to, be there, be around. And it was a massive coordination. So, and I don't know, I mean, they don't generally have committees. I mean, they have committees for a period, but if it's 6 years, they're not going to have a committee going. And so I don't know how they do that. I'm sorry, I'm just raising this because I think this is an important bill. And I think it's important for us to deal with this because I think public officials are getting more and more threats, and it's becoming more important, as they get vilified by various interests. So I don't know. I just wanted to. Is there anything we can do? Yeah, I just think this is important. I'll say that, and I don't know what the answer is for other ones, but I think, yeah, and maybe we.
And just to clarify, so you
Sure.
think this is an important issue?
Yeah.
But Ms. Nakano, this bill would create restrictions on the folks that you can pay to provide personal security, is that right?
Correct. So they'd have to be licensed by the BSIS, Bureau of Security and Investigative Services, I believe. And they provide the licenses for various types of security personnel.
Right, but I think that's important because part of this is communicating. You got to be serious about the security. You got to be, so you got to hire somebody who's real and a professional to deal with this because we can't have our public officials relying on their brother, to do this kind of stuff. And that's why I think this is important to do. The issue's important, and I think even the bill's important because it's about what it communicates to public officials about, we're going to support you doing this and paying for security, but you got to make sure it's real.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. And I think what can happen is you have 99% of the judges or any public officials following the rule. And then if you don't have a restriction like this in place, you have one who engages in a sort of questionable arrangement, right? And that undermines the whole process for protecting public officials in this context. So I think that's a really important point.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our last proposal. This would require additional reporting when a candidate-controlled committee makes expenditures over a certain amount to a single recipient when that candidate will not be listed on the ballot in the next election. So normally candidates are not spending large amounts and large expenditures when they're not in a non-election cycle for them. So this would highlight to the public and others when they're making larger expenditures during that period.
Is the language on this one in the package?
It is, at the moment, we have it written as a separate report. But we're considering it would likely be more prudent to include it in the existing semi-annual statement as just additional reporting.
Okay.
Great. Any additional questions for Ms. Nakano?
We're done, so on general, yeah, so can you help me learn about the process? And I want to understand our relationships to chairs and to leadership, Senator Limon just took office. Is that affected? But I want to understand how you approach those kinds of relationships. And do members need to be involved? I mean, you've got 3 members who formerly worked in the assembly, 3 commission members. So what's our relationship? We're executive branch, are we that, oh, here comes the FPPC, you're a problem. I mean, I don't know. If I can get a sense about how you work and whether we need to support you more, that kind of relationship stuff, that makes sense about just general practices. It's not something specific, but
A quick story. The only person who ever panicked when they heard that was from the FPPC was one of the mail rooms. I was delivering the annual reports and I think they thought I was trying to serve someone. But that was a misunderstanding and we got it cleared up.
okay.
But for the most part, people understand that I'm the legislative person. I'm not there to get them in trouble.
Right.
And I'm just there to talk policy. So our closest relationships are with the, I think, elections committees, their staff, and Senate Elections Committee has a new chair. Senator Wiener is the new chair of Senate Elections. So we'll be speaking with his staff and the committee staff about what his priorities might be as chair of the committee. I don't have a personal relationship with other leadership. Our chair, I think, has closer relationships with other leadership, but I'm mostly working with members, the committees, and staff.
Okay, thank you. That's just helpful. I'm just trying to learn how, I've been to the legislative branch for decades, and then now I'm in the executive branch. How do we deal with those people over there in the Capitol?
Yeah, for my experience being in this position for almost 2 years now, is I think there's a great deal of interest from the legislature in working with the FPPC on thoughtful, meaningful legislation that really takes into consideration the practical impacts of the legislation, right? So we were able to, last year, like we talked about, get 6 pieces of legislation through that were incredibly impactful, where public officials, high-level public officials, are going to have to disclose for the first time ever if they arranged for employment during their term. We've also sponsored legislation related to foreign interference in state elections, prohibitions on contributions in state buildings. I think there's a great deal of trust between our agency and the legislature, and they want to work on bills that we're sponsoring because we sponsor excellent policy, in my opinion. So we've had a bunch of people reach out to us just this year to see what we're working on. So I think you're doing an excellent job, Ms. Nakano, as well as our legal division, and commissioners in the past have been incredibly helpful in identifying the sorts of proposals that all stakeholders, good government groups, regulated community alike, support. So I think we're in a very good position.
Do we get, from either of you, do we have members coming to us as well with ideas? You talked about them doing that, but is that common?
I will frequently get questions about either technical questions about how the act works, how a change might work, ideas for things that their office is thinking about, and they kind of want to bounce ideas off of us. So I do get questions like that about things that they're thinking of.
A few times a year?
More.
Okay, good. That's good. I think that says a lot. I mean, both of those points say a lot about how our relationship with them and who we are. That's what I'm trying to learn, who we are, over there, because I did not do elections law mostly.
Yeah, we wear a lot of hats. So sometimes, the public regulated community is kind of confused about that dynamic as well. They're just, they're mostly focused on our prosecution piece rather than our education policy piece. But they're all incredibly important. I think we're doing a great job through legislation supporting each aspect of our agency. Speaking of a new chair on the Senate side for Elections Committee, is there any update as to the Assembly side, if they're gonna have a new chair of Elections Committee or a new chair of Ethics?
I don't have any updates at the moment, but I will check before the next commission meeting and see if there have been any changes.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Nakano. Do we have any public comment related to this item?
And I'd like to invite public comment if you have thoughts. I mean, we have all these bills, and any thoughts? I mean, you came here this morning, so thank you. And that's why I want to invite you if you have comments. Okay, I gotta let the record reflect that I got 2 thumbs up from one of the public members of the public.
Okay, why don't we move on to item number 4, and that's going to be discussion of items for the next Law and Policy Committee meeting. Are there any items you're interested in bringing up for the next
I
meeting?
don't, at this point, no, because I'm trying to learn what the scope of this committee, I mean, I've read the scope, but you know, no, so no at this point. I mean, I get legislation, but, you know, yeah, no. So and what do you want to do with this? I mean, you're the chair, so what do you want to do with this committee? Where do you want us to, I mean, are there subjects that we should be digging into and looking more carefully at? I mean, I think that's in some ways going to be the value of committees and committee members doing that kind of thing. But I don't identify. I don't see anything at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the timing of the meeting. You know, when we're out of session, I'm very interested to kind of delve into the policy piece with you, see what your thoughts are in terms of potential legislation, et cetera. I think this time of year, I think these meetings are really important for legislative staff. They actually, I'll hear from staff after this meeting saying, oh, we heard you said this in the LNP meeting, we'll keep that in mind. So I think for me, that's a really key point here. So don't be surprised if you get a email or two, Commissioner Brandt, after this meeting.
Okay, wow. Okay, hello out there to all my friends in the legislature.
So as far as I'm concerned, I don't have anything necessarily to add, and then we can discuss timing of the next meeting offline.
Can I ask Ms. West about history here from perhaps before Mr. Silver became chair? Has this committee done certain things? I mean, is there history here that I need to learn about what this committee does?
No, this committee was pretty much formed to give a way for committee discussions to get more in depth about certain issues, to where the two that would be on this committee can bring a recommendation to the commission. So with legislation, that's very important because you don't want to necessarily have a 2-hour legislation discussion every commission meeting, where the other commissioners feel more confident that these things have been fleshed out and talked and discussed during the committee meeting, and then it can be a more abbreviated conversation during the commission meeting. So that's always been very useful. And then also sometimes there's very complicated regulations that instead of doing an extra interested persons meeting, which aren't generally too well attended, and that we can put it on a law and policy committee meeting agenda and then really get into the nuts and bolts and have a conversation with the public, with 2 of the commissioners, to see where everybody wants to go with a reg. So it's for the regulations that are more at the idea stage before there's something concrete in direction. And so the general counsel will identify those and say, hey, this is one that we want to get early thoughts on from the public and the 2 commissioners on law and policy to make sure we're going in the right direction on this general idea that we were assigned.
Okay, that's helpful.
Excellent. Any public comment on item number 4?
Anything you think we need to dig into? No, I don't see anything.
Hearing and seeing none, I'm gonna move to adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Vo?
Commissioner Brandt,
Aye.
Chair Silver,
Aye.
meeting adjourned.
Okay, well, that was easy. Okay.